Say it loud. Voices of change.
Hello out there. Welcome to Say It Loud, communications on development and social change. And here at Say It Loud, we always say we are amplifying voices of change. What a way to amplify voices of change other than having Professor Plow with us today. Hi, Professor Plow.
Hello, Rose. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, how are you? How's this Friday going for you?
I love Fridays. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's the end of the week and beginning of the weekend, but Fridays always lift my spirits. And of course, it always lifts my spirits to be around you, a CommDev student. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Now, we know who Professor Plow is, but we would like the world to know who Professor Plow is, right? So who is Professor Plow? Please take us through.
Okay, so Professor Plow, I am a professor in the School of Media Arts and Studies here at Scripps College of Communication at Ohio University. And I've been on the faculty for about 12 years, and my focus has been documentary filmmaking, but that has shifted into communication and development and also media and social change, and really using storytelling to have positive social impact on a range of different issues. So I practice that as a filmmaker, but then I also turn around and I teach that to individuals so that they can have that same, what I feel is power and agency in telling stories.
Okay, Professor Plow. Well, I'm Rose's co-host and my name is Emmanuel. Can you share with us your journey into audio and videography?
Okay, so when I was an undergraduate student and a young person, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I went to a college where you didn't really have to declare what you wanted to do. You could just sort of like take classes, and that was the right thing for me. But then I discovered photography and film, and I found like an enormous amount of excitement and power in that. And I decided to pursue that, but I didn't really understand its social impact. And I really wanted to go into it. Like I wanted to go to Hollywood and make movies. And then I came to graduate school, and incidentally I came here to Ohio University to go to the School of Film. But I was continuing in fiction filmmaking, right? So making stories, making fictional worlds and telling fictional stories, which can also have positive impact. But and then toward the end of my studies, I realized I had this crisis of conscience, and I realized, you know, what am I doing? Like what everything that I'm learning, what kind of positive impact am I going to have on the world? This was at a time, it was after 9/11. America had gotten itself into two wars, and all, you know, probably for all the wrong reasons. But I'm not going to go into that. But it was a challenging time, just as it is now. And I kind of had this like idea that, well, am I just going to go into like entertainment, or am I going to take my skills and am I going to try to do my part to, you know, make a better world? And then I got my first teaching job at Towson University in Baltimore, Maryland. And that's really where I learned a lot about documentary, service learning, community storytelling, getting into the community, and not just making stories about other people, but the big shift becomes, how do you facilitate situations where people can learn to tell their own stories? And that's really where I found my value, was in not telling stories of other people, but creating space for people to tell their own stories.
It's quite interesting that you say so. Now, as communication and development students, in a master's level, the expectation would have been to write a research paper, but we've seen the flexibility that is within the program, and it allows us to have creative projects. Now, coming from a world where research is very traditional, very systematic, and there are certain like levels of great research, how have you seen research evolve over the years to where we now do storytelling from the perspectives of the people, like they narrate their own stories, but in itself, it is still research.
Yeah, and I think there's probably folks that could speak with more credibility on this than myself, because my background is not one of being a researcher. But what I've noticed is that the idea of what constitutes research has expanded and become more inclusive of different methodologies. And when it expanded, it then included the things that I have skills in. And I think when I came here in 2013, it was at the director at that time, Dr. Wood. We had conversations, and I was like, when I interviewed here, I was like, I really want to come here. And it was because of the CommDev program, because I felt like, oh my gosh, that there are things starting to happen here at this university with this program where I feel like I could be a valuable member of the team. And now that has only just accelerated. So now under current director, Dr. Pont, we've expanded that idea of research even more to include things like documentary, like podcasting, different types of qualitative research or different types of, ethnographic process that might even include things like participatory theater. So we're seeing an expansion of research into the creatives, not just in how we gather data, but that also how we express that data. And then sometimes the relationship between the two, there's no barrier between that. The expression is the data gathering at the same time. And I think the term that we're probably brushing up against in academia is called multimodal. That's at least what I've heard in different conferences and things. And there are some institutions that are very traditional that don't want to do that. And then there are other institutions that are less traditional and want to do that. There's not one is better than the other. We're not making a qualitative judgment there. But I feel like Ohio University, Scripps College, Center for International Studies, CommDev, is an environment where it's less traditional, and we're going after that.
So, Professor Plow, so from what you just said, how can we enhance that creative research? And do you think academics will begin to accept it?
Mm-hmm. How can we enhance that research? Well, we can enhance that research by producing more of it and then enhancing the visibility of the impact of that research. So one way in which we do that is we build better shared cognition. So within this community, we teach this class, right? You guys took the class every fall. It's Intro to Audio and Video Production.
Yeah.
But if we start making that more normal in more disciplines, that this is like an essential skill, it's like, when you start your graduate program, you're going to take a basic course in research methods. Well, okay, we're also taking a basic course in audio video production because it's a form of literacy. That it's an essential skill that everybody has to have. And if we validate that at the early sort of skills adoption or skills development part of graduate studies, then I think we're going to see more ideas on the table that embrace some form of creative production in the research process. And then that's just naturally going to build that critical mass. But also what it means too, what I mean by shared cognition is that we're not all learning the same skills, but we're talking about, you guys are learning skills that I don't have, right? And there could be a time where it's kind of like, I don't need to know that because Emmanuel knows that. And I'm going to work with him and he's going to take care of that part of the process and I'll do my part. So not all of us can know all things, right? But if we're a stronger community where we're sharing skills, we're helping each other out, we're engaging in more interdisciplinary collaboration, then I think we're going to see a strengthening of the creative, because there might be people that couldn't take that class, but they see some room for it in their dissertation, or they see some room for it in their thesis or professional project. And then they reach out to you and say, hey, I know you've got some experience with this. Let's work together. And then and we'll just go from there.
Yeah. You made me a filmmaker in my first semester.
Absolutely. You are a filmmaker. Yeah.
And we are very privileged. If
But-
I had to speak for CommDev, I would say all of us benefited a lot from your class. And we would like to know from you, what are the unique projects you've seen come out of CommDev? If you can think about one or two, maybe, not that they are the best of them all, but just one, those that like stood out for you and you can share to the world.
Well, first of all, I'll go back to what Emmanuel said. I didn't make you a filmmaker. You made you a filmmaker, right? And so I think that's an important distinction for me, is that I don't hold the keys to knowledge and then I grant them. It's like, you guys are coming here. Knowledge is already
with us.
Yeah, you have the keys, right? And I'm just here hanging out, enjoying everything, right? So remind me of your question again, because I forgot.
Any projects?
Projects.
that set CommDev students apart from other students. Not that they're not important, but because there's communication and development within them or demonstrated in their work. But what, like, now I'm trying. No, I shouldn't be giving you answers, but what sets them apart?
Yeah, well, I mean, just last was it last Friday where we saw Esther's performance? That was incredible. And I also think too, you know, as we get better and better at this, I mean, she's kind of a pioneer, right? Doing participatory development theater. I think that kind of is one of the first examples that I've seen. But if we could get to a point where we could platform those things, like, I think, you know, in a space where they got more visibility, then I think we're really progressing. I think that project is remarkable. And then in terms of documentary, where I can speak with more credibility, you know, in 2023, Zohal Nasrat, who was a Fulbright scholar from Afghanistan, came here as a CommDev student in August of 2021. And we all know that on August 15th of 2021, the Taliban fully took over Afghanistan, and there was the fall of Kabul and the fall of Afghan democracy. And, you know, she was here maybe for a couple of weeks, and then she's stuck here, and then she's watching, you know, basically her country just kind of dissolve. And she made this documentary about that process. So she went and found other Afghan students who were experiencing the same thing. I mean, they were all kind of stranded, not knowing what they were going to do, but knowing that they could not go home. And so the story was not just about, oh, I'm answering this research question. What are the attitudes and beliefs or feelings, hopes and dreams of Afghan Fulbright students who have been stranded here in the US? Okay, she's answering that research question, but it was more about a reflexive self-examination. You know, the story was about her as much as it was about these other individuals. And so she produced that documentary, and that was really moving. I remember her screening it just before her defense, and it was still rough around the edges, but screened it for a community of students in April of 2023 over in Baker Center. And the crowd was maybe like 30 or 40 people. And the emotional outpouring was like just so intense. It was probably one of the most intense experiences I've had in my career, was watching individuals react to that narrative. You know, I think that was a powerful moment. And in terms of that replacing research, it's not so much that, right? But she's still following the same path, right? She does the literature review. She does the methodology. You know, she determines the research questions, and then she goes after it. But it's the expression of those discoveries in documentary form that then differs from traditional research. those are some good examples. And there are probably others that I'm just like, that I should mention, that I'm drawing a blank on, or that maybe the time isn't long enough to go into those things. Yeah. But those are some really good examples, and I know we're going to see more and more of those as we go forward.
Okay. So, Professor Plow, what advice will you give to students or aspiring professionals who want to use storytelling and video documentaries as advocacy for development?
Okay, so advice for those individuals that want to do that. Training and practice is important. And I think the big thing is feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable. So whenever you're learning a new skill, especially a skill where maybe there's a lot of what you perceive to be mystery in the process, I see it every year with you guys when you take the class. It's like the beginning of the class, there's so much doubt, self-doubt. Like, I don't
exactly.
Like, what did I get myself into? And then you're like looking at the course catalog. Is this really a required course? Do I have to do this? Can I drop this class? But then what we do as quickly as possible is we just try to break up all of that mystery, all of that stuff, and just be like, no, this is a process just like any other process. And we're going to learn that process step by step. And I think whenever you're getting into creative endeavors, whenever you're getting into storytelling, you're going to move outside your comfort zone, and you're going to exist outside your comfort zone. However, it's like, and it's what I've been doing for the last 25 years, is living just on the edge of the comfort zone. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. You don't want to get into a situation where it's like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Because then there's all kinds of like psychological barriers to moving forward. But you also don't want to be in your comfort zone, which is, oh, I know everything that I'm doing and I'm just going to keep doing this. Because again, you're not going to progress forward. So living on the edge of that, just outside your comfort zone, and then feeling okay long-term being there, not just for 3 months, not just for 2 years, but 20, 25, 30, 35 years. That is an uncomfortable place to be, but that's where you should always be. And that's for anything. But when we talk about that social change environment, whatever we're doing, if we're doing traditional research, or if we're learning new skills like documentary, or we're telling stories creatively in any format, podcasting, any form of like going out into the field and doing, any sort of like ethnography or, any form of storytelling or any sort of qualitative data collection and processing, we got to be there in order to like keep it moving forward. Otherwise, we're either too overwhelmed to do it and we fall apart, or we're not motivated enough to do it.
Yeah. Just a little backtrack. In communication and development studies, we deal with a whole lot of topics, and most of them are very sensitive issues. I do remember that we had, you had a screening of one of the documentaries you produced. I can't remember, around Crossnova. There was a hall down there. And it was one of the most amazing documentaries, if you remember. It was one of, I think it was, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Gosh,
so
really nice of you to say that.
one question would be for those that really do creative work on sensitive issues, or at least those that are that will create a lot of impact.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance feeling emotional and carrying out the project with the dignity and decency it requires?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, my work, I've done a lot of work with individuals who have experienced some form of trauma. And I think if I were to classify one of my specializations, it would be trauma-informed filmmaking. The vast majority of us around the world have experienced at least one form of trauma in our lives. And in the US, I think it's like, at least I know the US statistics, 2/3 of individuals before the age of 18 have experienced at least one trauma. And something like 10, 12% of Americans before the age of 18 have experienced 4 or more traumas. The more traumatic experiences that you had, the more likely that you are going to have some form of negative health outcomes. And statistically, in the US at least, more traumas you experience, more likelihood of early or premature death. I mean, it has impact. It has impact on communities. We can have collective traumas. We can have individual traumas. So when I do work in areas where people are experiencing those vulnerabilities, I look at things through a particular lens. One is that I never identify people with and wholly from their trauma. So if I'm dealing with, like in Baltimore, we ran this interdisciplinary arts seminar around the concept of homelessness. And I would never mention somebody, oh, they are a homeless person, right? Because that defines them by what they're experiencing. And that's not fair. That's not who they are, right? So I'd always phrase it, this person, this is a person who is experiencing homelessness. So you're really enabling more definition by what people are experiencing and not letting that absorb their entire identity. And also really pulling away from this idea of using the word victim and then starting to use things like survivor. Because the focus is not on, yes, okay, when we talk about emotion, we talk about storytelling, we're talking about the term pathos, right? And pathos means like empathy, or it could mean pity, right? But we reserve the word pity for an extreme form of empathy where we're really feeling sorry for somebody. That's not really what we want. We want to manage a little bit of that empathy, but really what we want to focus on is building a connection with that character and then the audience watching that character exercise some form of resilience. And resilience is really the key. And so when we tell these positive narratives, we don't just want to focus on, yes, we need to focus on some of the negative things. They're part of our reality, right? They're going to be part of the story told. But then we want to shift and we want to show how human beings are being resilient and all the different ways that we can experience resilience. We're an adaptive and for all of our flaws as a species, there's also a lot of good attributes. And we are adaptive and we do love and we have compassion and we want to seek healing. All of these wonderful things that are part of the human experience that we don't always get to see when we tune into like CNN or Facebook, right? We see all the negative stuff. But I think when we focus on those positive aspects in the story and we start infusing them into the story, and by the end of it, that's the power of resilience storytelling, is showing that, oh, these bad things have happened, but there's a pathway to something better. And I think that's what I'll always focus on in my work. Okay,
so let's backtrack a little. I want to ask you a double-barrel question.
Double-barrel question. Now I'm really nervous. This is the gotcha part.
How did you get involved in the CommDev program in the first place? And what is your most memorable moment?
Okay. I pushed my way into the CommDev program. I was not going to take no for an answer. No, when I came here in 2013, I immediately started working with CommDev students. And then 2014 was the first time that I taught that class. And I think it was just sort of a natural coming together of people and opportunities. And so it wasn't really like, oh, here was this process. It just sort of happened. And I was just like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna run with it. And then kept teaching that class over and over and over again. And it was a wonderful experience. We just kept building. Every year it got better, And then my most memorable moment, there's so many. There were two memorable moments. One was the 2022 fall, was the 35th anniversary of the 35th anniversary celebration. And, the CommDev program honored me. They had so many dignitaries that they were bringing in, people that had started the program, right?
Yeah.
These pioneers, and had done all these amazing things, and then they included me in that, and they gave me an award for my contributions over the last 10 years. And I was moved to tears. It was such a special moment. And I get emotional now just remembering that, because that was really special. And then just last spring, CIS giving me another teaching award for my contributions, because it's not just CommDev students that take that class. Yeah. I mean, it's all international students from all these different programs. And just those students welcoming me into that community and letting me be a part of that community, I think has been one of the most special gifts that I could think of in my career. And that's you guys giving that gift to me. And I'll always be appreciative.
That's very emotional. Rose, I didn't get an ow from you. I thought
I
get an ow.
We really, really appreciate you, Professor Plow.
I appreciate you.
CommDev loves you.
I love
You've been
CommDev.
such a blessing to CommDev. I'll speak for all CommDevers. If there's anyone who holds anything against Dr. Plow, come through me. Come through me. But
I love it.
Thank you so much for allowing us a chance to talk to you. And we hope the audience out there realize that this is a program to be in. This is a program to have on your CV.
Absolutely.
Just saying you worked with Professor Plow and many other professors that we work with, this is a privilege to have. And thank you so much. You know where to catch us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram,
Spotify, every social media platform. Yeah.
Everywhere. CommDev is taking over the world. Thank you.
So this has been Say It Loud on, edit.
From us.
Edit.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
This has been Say It Loud, Voices of Change. Thank you for tuning in. Join us on our next episode. Produced by Communication and Development Studies and the cast, executive producer Jessica Ngolo, recording manager Betty Kankambuedu, editor and graphic designer Felipe Barella, guest coordinators Zoya Fatima Hamad and Erica Edzema, administrator Esther Efrier, guided by the director of the program, Dr. Somya Pant.